The people Israel heard the voice of God. They stood assembled at the base of Mount Sinai, fearful. They saw the lightning and thunder, a shofar blast, the mountain covered in smoke. And don't ask me how they saw the shofar blast or the thunder, because it is revelation, an experience beyond human senses or language. The people heard the voice of the living God. It must have been extraordinary. God articulated the laws that the people must accept in order to be in covenantal relationship. Chief among those laws, Anochi Adonai Elohecha, I am Adonai, your God. Lo yihye lecha Elohim acharim al panai, you shall have no other gods beside me. Lo ta'aseh lecha fesel, you shall not make for yourself a sculptured idol or any formed image of what is in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or in the waters under the earth. And to that the Israelites answered in one voice, we will do all the things that God said. Moses wrote down the laws and read them aloud to the Israelites, just to be sure that they really understood. And the Israelites repeated, all that God has said, we will do, and we will listen. All right. Moses went up the mountain to speak privately with God. God gave him more detailed instructions on how this covenantal relationship will work. There will be a holy Mishkan, a traveling sanctuary in which God will dwell. There will be priests dressed and ordained in a specific way. But then, Moses came down the mountain, and he saw the Israelites dancing around a molten golden calf. The Israelites heard the voice of the living God, and they made the golden calf 40 days later. What happened? A generous read. The Israelites were trying to worship the true God, but they got confused on how to do so properly. This is the stance of philosopher, poet, physician Yehuda Halevi, writing in 12th century Spain. He explained, number one, all people in ancient days worshipped tangible images. God even gave detailed instructions on how to build a golden portable sanctuary, complete with golden cherubim standing guard over a golden ark. And number two, when Moses told the Israelites that he was going up the mountain to speak with God, and he didn't take any food and water with him, the people were left with the impression that he'd be back later that day, maybe the next day. And 40 days later, their leader has yet to reemerge. And so it's not all that surprising that some of the Israelites take matters into their own hands. Yehuda Halevi tells a parable to explain the incident of the golden calf. A fool enters a doctor's office and helps himself to medicine. The drugs, when taken as authorized, are life-saving, but the fool, making up doses and combinations, will not only fail to cure himself, but may well harm himself. In the parable, the medicine itself isn't poison, which is to say, it's not that golden statues created in God's honor are problematic in and of themselves. It is the dosage that's the problem. The Israelites' offense was specifically that they tried to create their own ritual. Yehuda Halevi explains that the people did not intend to commit idolatry, but imagined that they were striving to worship the true God. After all, the Israelites exclaim over the molten golden calf, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." I appreciate Yehuda Halevi's empathy for the Israelites. They have been through a great trauma, having fled the only land and life that they have ever known. Their leader has seemingly abandoned them. They are still learning to be a free people, to be in covenant, to trust in God. And yet, Even when we are traumatized, even when our leadership falters, we ought not turn to idols. After all, God's law was clear. Lo ta'aseh lecha fesel. You shall not make for yourself a sculptured idol. Even if we agree with Yehuda Halevi that the Israelites are not intentionally seeking out other gods, this still is idolatry, as evidenced by the fact that God punishes the perpetrators. The context might explain the idolatry, but it does not excuse it. The golden calf incident demonstrates that idolatry is possible. Idolatry is tempting, even. Aviva Zornberg writes, "How was it conceivable that 40 days after the Sinai revelation, with the commandments, 'I am the Lord, thou shalt have no other gods but me,' still ringing in their ears, they could form the golden calf? Evidently, the Torah wished to impress on us for all time that such a thing was conceivable. The assumption that people who have scaled the loftiest heights of divine communion are not capable of descending into the depths of depravity is without foundation. To dismiss this generation of Israelites as uniquely weak, somehow exceptionally susceptible to the temptations of idolatry, is to miss the point. Rather, the story comes to suggest that all of us could do such a thing. Even people who knew God intimately, who saw the thunder on the mountaintop, even those who sought covenant with all their hearts, even they could build a golden calf. So much more so could we. Even people who heard God's prohibition against worshiping the product of their own hands, even they could build a golden calf. So much more so could we. Exclusive worship of an invisible God is hard. Monotheism is hard. Monotheism means that when terrible things happen, we have nowhere to turn but the one God, the same God who caused the disaster, or allowed it, or couldn't stop it. No other God to whom we can appeal, and no other divine power whom we can blame. Only the one God who is accountable for everything, good and bad. Accepting God's singularity is difficult. That is why the Bible is full of prescriptions against idol worship, why the prophets exhaust themselves exhorting Israel to live up to our part of the covenant. We have fallen short of the monotheistic ideal time after time. When we fail at monotheism, our tradition calls that idolatry. Idolatry in Jewish conception takes many forms. Idolatry can manifest as adulation of natural phenomena, worship of the Nile or the sun or the moon, rather than directing worship toward God who created the splendors of the natural world. Idolatry can look like worship of an individual, Pharaoh, or any other charismatic leader. Idolatry can be fetishization of the work of human hands, including, but certainly not limited to, worship of a statue. And the story of the golden calf illustrates yet another type of idolatry, worship of God, but in the wrong way. After all, recall what the Israelites said while dancing around the golden calf. "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of Egypt." They were trying to worship the one true God, but the way they conceived of God was entirely wrong. There's bad theology out there today, too, including problematic theological strands within our own tradition. Theology that conceives of God as a slot machine. If we do X, God will do Y. Or theology that limits God, flattens God. Authentic monotheism accepts that God is so much greater and more complex than we can grasp. It is only through a kaleidoscope of metaphor, philosophy, holy texts, lived experience that we can catch glimpses of the divine. Our theology must have room for all of the diverse, overlapping, incompatible portraits of God. Ceding authority to any single God metaphor, like God as Father, God as King, risks making an idol out of that metaphor. Our ancestors standing at the foot of Sinai fell short of the authentic monotheism to which Jews are called. Possibly we fall short too. If that happens, I hope that we, like the Israelites, will recommit to the covenant, try again, and may every generation declare, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shabbat Shalom.